Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, a podcast designed to help you become the leader you are destined to be. Today's episode is the second in a series that I'm doing on the elements of personal growth and transformation. And these elements are from my new book, Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, Become the Woman You Are Destined to Be. And last week we talked about a little bit about the first element. Each element is broken down into 3 parts, and there are 7 elements. So this will be a 21-part series. And so today's episode is the second in the series. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, you want to stop this recording, go back and listen to the first one in this series. So it really lays the foundation for this week's episode and what we're talking about today. And I think I've shared this with you before. I had an interesting question on a podcast interview recently. Someone asked me, they're like, Ria, this book is great, but why did you just write it for women? Like, these principles are great. They apply to men too. And that's true. And I know that there are some men that listen to this podcast, and that's okay. I really focus my niche on teaching and speaking and even some of my writings towards women just because that is my niche. And when you think about that, that's just really my target audience. But absolutely, the principles apply to men just the same way. They're just as effective. It's just that my niche and my target audience, and I think really the people that I can best help the most tend to be more women. So that's why I talk about this book in terms of personal growth and transformation for women. So let's get into kind of the meat for today's episode. Last week we talked about the first element of personal growth and transformation, which is self-belief. And the first part of that first element is accepting responsibility, right? Not accepting responsibility for everything that happens, because we cannot control other people. We cannot control most of what happens. But what we are responsible for is ourselves. We're responsible for our actions. We're responsible for our thoughts. We're responsible for our beliefs. We're responsible for our behaviors and our choices and our words. And that's tough to accept sometimes because most of us don't really think about that. We tend to grow up a certain way, and we're not a product of our environment or our circumstances, but certainly we're influenced by that. You probably have the same religion that your parents had, for example. Not always, certainly not 100% of the time, because that doesn't determine us, but it does influence us. And so most people go through life or go through their day, and they just kind of accept by default the influences that have influenced them. And so what I mean by that is, if you're pretty much raised in the Christian faith, most people accept that and they don't divert from that. Now, it does happen, absolutely, because we're not determined by that influence of how we're raised in a faith. But for the most part, most of us don't question that. It's just an circumstance that heavily influences us, and so we don't stop to question that. And I'm not saying that you should necessarily. What I am saying is that you should consider how the influences that aren't serving you well have helped create the person you are now. And I'll give you an example of this. Most of you know my story of being sexually abused by my father from age 12, and that progressed as I got older. By the time I was 17 and 18, he was regularly having sex with me, and then he started trafficking me. And when I share that story, there's a lot of pain and trauma associated with that. So I don't tend to talk about that a lot, just because, number one, it's painful, but I don't think it serves anyone to just to really dig into the details of my life back then. So a lot of times I don't really talk about the other aspects of my teenage years. But for example, this is a good point that illustrates what we're talking about today. The second part of the first element of self-belief is that I can change, fill in the blank. Whatever it is you want to change, about your life is you've got to accept at some level that that component of self-belief is believing in your ability to change whatever it is you want to change. So, for example, and here's where I was going with that story a moment ago. My parents were not healthy eaters, and so our family didn't eat healthy. We didn't learn about a lot about nutrition or anything like that. I remember, um, growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of friends, but the ones that I did tended to be very health conscious, all organic and, growing a lot of their own food. And we did a lot of that growing up, but we also had Krispy Kreme donuts or, Oreos for breakfast. And, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Oreos for breakfast, except that heavily influenced me through my younger years and growing up as a teenager. And so I never really thought about food as a critical component of my health. And you probably don't anyway when you're a young teenager and a kid. That's just part of, not needing that level of awareness of health and food choices. But I never really realized how I had just accepted, Coke and Diet Coke and soda was just a staple of our household. Like that's just what you drank. If you were thirsty, you went and got a Coke or a Diet Coke. And I never really questioned that. But as, looking back now, I've learned so much more about nutrition. I've stepped away from that. I quit drinking soda, and then I quit drinking diet soda, and it wasn't easy to do. But when I really started to question how I had always just taken for granted that food was just something like, oh, if you were thirsty, you go drink a diet soda or soda. And so I'd never really questioned how that was affecting my health. So as I started to get more knowledge and learn more about intentionally eating for my health and emotional and physical well-being, I realized that influence had not really served me well. And so, again, I'm not saying that everything you believe is wrong by any means, but what I am saying is that you have to, at some level, whatever it is you want to change about your life today, is you've got to accept, number one, the responsibility. We talked about that last week. But then you've also got to embrace the fact that you can change. You can change. You can change, period. You can change whatever it is you want to change. Almost everything. Now, almost everything. I mean, sure, there are some complete physical limitations. If you want green eyes and your eyes are brown, I can't help you with that, right? No amount of belief, maybe some faith and some prayer, but that's just a physical thing. It's just a fact, and so you can't change that. But you could accept the responsibility and believe in yourself for changing almost everything. If you want to run a 5K or a marathon, right, you've got to believe that you can change whatever it is you want to change. You've got to be able to change your ability to accomplish that goal. And I talked just a little bit last week about the factors of resilience, right? The first factor was a sense that you have control in some way of yourself. The second factor is a strategy to move forward. And that's really what today's episode is about. Once you embrace the fact that you can change pretty much whatever it is you want to change, then quit focusing on what you cannot change. If you want to get your dream job, whatever that is, you've got to identify what it is you need to do differently to achieve that. If you want to quit your job and start your own business, what are the things that you need to do? And once you buy into the fact that, hey, I'm not happy with my job, I can change this, or whatever it is for you, whatever it is you want to change, then all you got to do is figure out what you need to do to get it. That's the active strategy. That's the second factor. And that's not just a resilient strategy. I mean, that's a success strategy, right? The principles are foundational and fundamental, and they're consistent, just like gravity. Hundreds and thousands of women that I've talked to all over the world have shared struggles with me, and a lot of them are common to many of us. Struggles with influence with other people, with our spouse, with our boss, with our kids. struggling with weight, struggling with fitness, or just the desire for a better job, or maybe it's just the desire that, man, my life is so full, it's overstuffed, I don't have enough time, and so I want to less stressful daily life, right? There are a few things that we cannot change, but most of what's going on in our world we can influence and we can change. Now, if you truly cannot change something, don't focus on that. Move on. Don't waste your time on that. Don't dwell on it either. That's an important factor. But quit worrying about it. Quit stressing about it. If you truly cannot change it, then don't worry about trying. But most things can be changed or influenced. Maybe not right away, right? If your goal is to become a knockout fitness model, for example, right? You probably can achieve that, but it's probably not going to happen tonight, right? You can't just decide to eat healthy one meal and improve your health. It's a transformational journey. So here's a powerful exercise, because this is going to help you focus on the action strategy, right? Because the thoughts that we think determine our feelings. Feelings determine our actions. Actions influence results. So what thoughts are you thinking about what you want to change? So if you were to write down right now, if you're driving, don't do this, but if you are not driving and you've got a pen handy, get a piece of paper out and write down the one thing that you want to achieve, whatever that is. And then underneath it, write down everything that you can do that will help you move forward and get closer to that result. Now, maybe your goal is to start that business. So under start your business, you write that at the top of the page, and then underneath you list things like start a website, order some business cards, get some clients, make up some marketing flyers. I don't know. So you should have a list of things that you just brainstorm about. What are things that would help me move closer toward that goal? Maybe you wrote lose 5 pounds. Maybe that's your one thing, right? And now you've got to embrace the fact, I can change this about myself. Now all I got to figure out is, how do I do it? So you might list things like exercise every day, eat a salad every day instead of, whatever else you might be. Sign up for a 5K, sign up for a race. So just brainstorm here, and don't stop until the page is full. Like, ask for help if you need to. Call your best buddy, your best gal pal, and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Help me think of things that will help me get there. And think big things, think little things. Just don't think impossible. Just think, what can I do? What's going to help me move forward? So I always love to give personal examples. And for me, fitness is a big part of my life because it's so important to my health. And, last year I had the goal of improving my running to the point that I could qualify for the Boston Marathon, and I did that. And so, but I don't want to stop there. I'm growth oriented. And so, this year, obviously, since the pandemic and everything, there haven't been a whole lot of races. And so I may not even have another race this year. But this year I've set the goal for myself to just improve that time a little bit more. I want to continue to develop myself, and I know I've got potential to do that. So if I were to go through this exercise, I would write down, improve my marathon time. And one of my action items was that I really needed to get outside my comfort zone in terms of training, right? I've got the endurance piece down. Running for, 10 miles or 12 miles, that's become a lot more comfortable. And so that's really not helping me achieve that goal because I'm not stretching, right? That's not stretching me any longer. And so I had to figure out, well, what do I need to do differently to help me stretch more if I want to continue to improve in this area of my life? And so I needed to do, I need to do some speed work. I need to get uncomfortable with my training. And so I'm just sharing with you a specific example from my situation where if we're growth oriented, sometimes it means reflecting on whatever it is we want to change about our circumstances and then figuring out what's going to help us grow towards that. And a lot of times it's being growth oriented that's the key, right? And so once you've got that whole page of action items, I want you to choose 3. You could choose more, but I want you to start small. You'll be much more likely to be successful if you start small. So just choose 3. But here's your criteria. Your 3 must be, number 1, something that you can do every day. Every day. Weekends, your birthday, Christmas, every day. Not all day. You don't have to do it long, but something you could do every day. And then number 2, something you are completely 100% committed to doing. 100%. And I mean 100%. There is nothing in the world that's going to stop you from doing that. And number 3, it's got to be small. Small and easy. Don't choose the big things from your list, because I know those look good. Like maybe you wrote down start a business, and so you wrote down build a website as one of your action items. See if you could break that down, because build a website is exciting, right? It's exciting to have your own website for your business. That's awesome. But that's pretty daunting if you're starting from nothing right now. So maybe you want to break that down and say, instead of create a website as one of your 3 action items, maybe you want to write down, spend 15 minutes a day working on website design. Maybe that's just 15 minutes today of reading about the different types of websites. And then tomorrow you're going to spend 15 minutes choosing your domain for yourself. And then the next day you might spend 15 minutes buying a hosting website, or, calling a website designer, whatever. So you see how you can break these action items down. So if you have a list of strategic actions, see how far you can break them down, because that's what I want you to choose. When I say choose your list of 3 things you can do every day, I want that goal to be so easy to accomplish that there is no way you are not going to do it every single day. And for you to commit to doing it every single day, it's got to be something that's easy and something that's doable, right? Because I know you're busy. I mean, we're all busy. We all have stuff going on. It's got to be something that you can commit to with 100%. Doesn't matter if there is an earthquake today, I am going to get my 3 things accomplished. So a couple of ideas that help you accomplish those every single day. Number 1, it works for me to get them done early. I don't know if everybody's like that, but if I get them done first thing in the morning, I know nothing else is going to get in the way the rest of the day. So for me, I'm a morning person. I like to make sure if I have to get up a little earlier to accomplish that, fine, I will. Because I'd much rather get up a little bit earlier, get it done first thing before the distractions of the day come, before other emergencies happen and other people's priorities, right? That's why I like to tackle my most important thing right away, because I'm much more likely to get it done. So, that just helps me. It's just a strategy. And there again, make sure that you're making something small. You're choosing something small. Your action item needs to be small. And number 2, I've heard James Clear talked about this in his book, Atomic Habits. And he says, never miss twice, right? I'm not going to tell you that, your world might fall apart one day and you're not able to commit to getting your 3 things done today. I don't know what that would look like. It almost doesn't happen. If you get up and do your 3 things first thing in the morning, the likelihood of getting derailed is really pretty small. But if it ever does happen, don't miss twice. Don't miss twice. If something absolutely happened and derailed you completely, don't miss tomorrow too. Because if you miss tomorrow too, now you've created a habit of not following through on your commitment to yourself, right? Once might be life just got in the way. I'm going to give myself some grace, but I'm just going to get right back on track with following through. Because you don't want to create a pattern of breaking the commitments to yourself. We talk a lot about commitments we make to other people, but we've got to make sure that we are honoring the commitments that we make to ourselves, because you have the power to reach your potential. Start creating the life that you want, one choice at a time. Nothing's stopping you. Until next time. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast. Hey, if you found value in today's episode, will you get social? Will you subscribe to the podcast? Go ahead and hit the subscribe button, leave a review, or get on social media and just share what you found valuable about today's episode. Because here's the thing, those subscriptions, those reviews, and then sharing on social media, that's what helps other people find out about the podcast, and that's what helps other people learn and grow with you. So if you found even just a nugget of wisdom or a quote that you enjoyed, or just something that you really enjoyed about today's episode, just get vocal about it and share it so that others in your network can grow too. Thanks for listening.